Hello, I'm Ellen Bintz, coming today from Wheaton, Illinois, in the USA. Welcome to Impact, a podcast about how we can each bring about real change in the world and getting practical in making that happen.
And hello, I'm Clive Johnson, coming today from Leigh-on-Sea in the UK. A special welcome if you're listening for the first time, and a big thank you to our new subscribers. Each week we look at one aspect of how we can connect our hearts to offer healing for others with our collective intention, prayers, and meditation, and go behind the headlines of a critical happening in our world that needs our attention right now.
In today's episode, we're taking a little bit different of a deep dive to more fully understand, I guess you would say, each other, and something hopefully many of us know about, and see where we might hone in with our prayers and intentions. And as we record, it's May 26th, 2026.
Nearly the end of May. Incredible, isn't
Yep.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. This should be fun.
It's
And just to say, we probably are going to spend a little bit longer discussing this topic than we might normally, so bear with us. As regular listeners know, we do our best on the podcast to keep abreast of the news and to check that what we offer is, as much as possible, an accurate take on what's really happening in the world. And to do that, we usually rely on multiple sources to do that. The idea being that if we're checking, a number from different organizations, we might get hopefully build an accurate picture. And those include many of what might be regarded as trusted news sources. However, of course, there's always a risk that what's being reported, even by several news outlets together and also with on-the-ground footage, may be based on perception, limited in its context, biased, or even wrong altogether. It struck us that common perceptions about how others live and the worldviews they hold are rarely challenged. This is the case in our own countries, where most Americans may have views about the UK and Europe that may not line up with the experience of most Brits, and of course vice versa, where Britain's opinions of Americans are concerned. So this week, in the interest of getting to a little bit of the truth, we thought we'd explore what we think we know about each other. Here, we're talking about what Americans think about Brits and vice versa, not what I think of Ellen and she thinks of me, which I probably don't want to know. Of course, these are generalizations, but based on what's commonly heard and reported. We can also only cover, obviously, a small number of topics, giving us the excuse, maybe, to return to this fascinating theme at some other point. Understanding perceived difference matters. In our little exchange this week, we particularly focus on topics where perceptions of how things are across the pond may cause shock or alarm, or at least seem to differ quite significantly with the worldviews and ways of life that we may be used to on our own territory. It may be quite timely, actually, to take a look at these differences, especially since both the US and the UK are approaching important anniversaries in the coming weeks. These being, as I'm sure all Americans know, the 250th anniversary of American independence. Of course, that's being marked already, but culminating, I guess, with big celebrations on the 4th of July, and the 10th anniversary of the UK's Brexit referendum. Probably one of the main events in British history since the Second World War, which will occur on the 23rd of June this year.
We should say that in this episode, we're allowing our personal views to take center stage and want to approach this in a discussion style. Of course, we have our own perspectives and don't live the lives experienced by many of our fellow citizens, but we'll do our best to keep a broad view on what we hear and observe. We also realize that there's a lot of ground to cover, so we split our ponderings into 2 episodes. We should say, too, with great respect to folks across American continents, we're using the term American in this episode as it's often colloquially used to refer just to U.S. citizens and residents. And of course, we're not here to justify or defend different viewpoints, merely to offer our reflections on the perceptions. We're not necessarily perfect representatives of our fellow citizens either. In fact, almost certainly not. This week, my eye is on the ground as we turn attention to what many Brits think life in the USA is like.
Hmm.
So, have
Well,
at it, Clive.
yeah, well, I'm gonna pose some questions, but I don't know. I guess maybe just sharing some of my own very general impressions of what uh, what the US means.
Yeah.
I was actually reflecting back to, I think, the real significance, the real prominence of US life, society in my childhood, even, back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, particularly on television, the US
Mhm.
was very dominant and a lot of TV came from the US. So it, I think, really shaped views about what at that time seemed to be to me, a very progressive, a very modern, quite an advanced society, if not the most advanced in terms of its innovation and in terms of the modernity, which I think had great appeal to me. Admittedly, I learned quite a lot about the criminal justice system in the US, or at least the operation of the NYPD through not only Kojak, but Top Cat, as we used to call it, an Officer Dribble. And there were a lot of those kind of, what do you call them? Those memes
Yeah.
that played a big part.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it was small things in a way that are no longer differences that really stood out at that time to me. The way that typical phone alarm when the phone rings would be a different kind of trim to the one we'd have in Britain. Cars, they were
Mhm.
bigger and, I don't know, seemed to be grander in the main, the American cars. And of course, the roads were typically very straight.
Wider and wider.
They could cope with the odd Lincoln Continental, I think, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a society that was intriguing and very much, I think, in the consciousness of most Brits growing up at that time. So, shall
But
we?
how about today? How
Well,
about today?
yeah, today I think, in terms of being a progressive society, I think my own view, and I'm talking my own view rather than I can't really represent other Brits, is that that's changed quite a lot. I mean, obviously, Silicon Valley is still
Mhm.
the dominating force in the IT world and technology, but I see that Europe, especially UK, have come a long way in terms of kind of catching up with out of town shopping centres and big
Mhm.
cars and phones that can ring any way you wish them to and all this kind of thing. And my own exposure to US has been heavily influenced by the fact I've visited many times. I think I probably visited close to 30 times if I
Wow.
including business visits. Some of those were just like 1 or 2 day visits, overnight to an office somewhere and hotel and back. And I probably visited around about 30 states, I think, over the time, which maybe even more. Probably the biggest opportunity I had was the Labyrinth Around America trip, where I was
Mhm.
staying very often with, was a guest of people and people from right across the political spectrum as well. And, I was there not to judge and not to, I was there to provide some ministry essentially. And I deliberately often went off piece. So it was not a kind of like a tourist trip. It was going to some of the poorer parts of town, places people told me I shouldn't go. And I saw like very many different sides of American society, I think. So much so that I cannot generalize. It's just impossible to generalize and pick out, what I saw as being particularly attractive and what most concerned me. Yeah, I mean, things like the social care for some of the folks I saw on the streets who were very elderly and so on did kind of disturb me, I think. But there may be circumstances and things I'm not aware of for individuals being in those situations. But yeah, it has changed quite a lot, and obviously the political climate is a big influencer as well on opinion. I know not just for me, but for others too.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm.
And I'm sure the way the US has been portrayed in the media has changed over recent years too. Like, do you do you guys believe we have a strong economy? Or is it portrayed that we are the major superpower, or are we even your ally anymore? How is that being portrayed?
Yeah.
very recently, I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think it has been changing literally in the last year, and particularly with the conflict in the Middle East and
Mm-hmm. Yep.
things that have come out of the White House comments made around, British soldiers and so on, and the kind of rhetoric that goes around playing games with tariffs. No, definitely not at the moment. The US is not seen, sadly, almost universally, it's almost across the political spectrum, which is really significant, as a reliable ally. I think there's sympathy, and I have sympathy for things like, the Trump administration telling Europe, buck up your ideas in terms of contributions to NATO and in terms of bolstering, making fair contributions to defense and so on, and not expecting to rely, as perhaps has been traditionally the case, on American support. But it's been very, very fraught, I think, and there's been diplomacy's kept it together. Most recently with the soft diplomacy of the King's visit, I think that played a useful part. But things change moment to moment, week to week, and that is why I think it's such an unreliable relationship. In terms of the economy, I think Wall Street is still seen as being dominant in the world, but I don't think that necessarily, the continued strength of the dollar, and indeed even the continued reality of the situation of the dollar continuing to be the go-to currency for the world, investment currency, is necessarily guaranteed either. So, yeah, we can't take that for granted. But for sure, I think generally speaking, the American economy is seen as being big enough, diverse enough, and strong enough to look after itself. And in areas like energy provision as well, there's less dependency than we have here in Europe. So yeah, it's definitely one of the big boys in the world.
What about our involvement in the war we started in Iran? What's the take on that, especially since Trump has asked the allies to support him?
Well, the public take is very clear, and that is, do not get involved. This is not a war that we started. It is seen, despite what the likes of Rubio and Hesketh say, as a war that was started by Israel and the US. I know there are arguments around preemptive striking for self-defense and so on, but it came at a time when there seemed to be progress with the talks that were going on with Iran. And I think the suspicion, strong suspicion of most people, is that the US was encouraged into the war by Israel, seeing an opportunity to strike. And that is almost universally condemned or seen as being, that's not what you do, especially when negotiations are going on. Unless you are existentially threatened at that moment. And I know Israel, or the current Israel government, might use that argument, but I personally think it's one that many people would not believe, trust.
Okay.
And I mean, it's a total disaster. I think it was also considered to be where it would go, the consequences, if it couldn't get resolved very quickly, if it didn't achieve its objectives right away, and what the end game was, essentially, and what comes after, was very poorly thought through, almost to the point, it seems, which is incredible, that the effects arising from the closure of the Straits of Hormuz were not really properly thought through. And I think, there's polls that are done on this, and a lot of public opinion expressed in all sorts of different media outlets. This seems not a universal view, but it's by far the majority view. Yeah. It's a bad war, and Britain is right not to get involved. And indeed, we were burned. It was a huge lesson for the Tony Blair government for becoming involved in the war with Iraq, rushing at that time to the call from the White House to support them on the basis of there being weapons of mass destruction. And subsequently, that actually has sadly become Blair's main legacy, taking the country to war when there wasn't a justification.
Do the people in the UK know that not everyone supports this administration, that we are fighting as hard here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's generally very widely understood. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Mm.
comforting.
Not everyone brandish with the same brush kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
things change, don't they?
they
Yes.
do, they do. And will doubtless change again. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the low points, but it's not the only time. Actually, there have been significant foreign policy disagreements over the years, and yeah, they've not always been easy to come through. So perhaps now we might turn to some specific themes, and for this, it's time for Alan to be our US representative, impossible task though that may be. Now, I'm particularly interested in the things that many, or at least some of us Brits, think about Americans that might cause us to raise our eyebrows, or even sometimes cause alarm. The kind of thing that gets us thinking, do they really do that? Or, that's really weird. We're generalizing, of course, but let's see if we can tease some of this out. So let's start with this key question of politics. In some of the coverage of US politics I hear over here, US democracy seems almost near the point of collapse. What would you say to someone who says that the US has swung heavily to a right wing ideological extreme, dominated by Christian nationalist views, pushing the boundaries of democracy, even with gerrymandering and abuse of executive powers being at play?
Well, I really want to use a word I probably shouldn't during a podcast. But yes, you have summed up how many of us feel very succinctly. There's absolutely this influence happening, the extreme Christian nationalist views. And viewers should know that I'm not, and I think you from past episodes, that I am not a fan of Trump. And to give you a 30-second background, I was raised a strong Republican, and it was in my adulthood that I switched to the left a bit because of the work I was doing
Mm,
in jails with underserved people. And I saw the benefit, and I'm an accountant, so I can put the money together
mm,
too,
mm, mm.
and realize that many of the programs that get portrayed as being wasteful really end up being cost saving in the end. And there are ways to be humanitarian effort put forth and also be cost effective
Yeah, yeah.
in the long run. So that's where I sit. And I'm happy to hear that many people around the world realize that not all of us are in that camp. And in fact, there are so many of us who aren't. The extreme Christian fundamentalists are, because I have friends in many different religions. It's just scary.
Mm,
It is very scary because that is where the KKK and those groups live,
mm.
in that world,
Yeah,
and
find
control.
a home within that
Mhm.
ideology, really.
Yeah. So it is as scary as you guys think it is here.
Mm.
Mhm.
And they were
I would.
very involved, very influential, as far as we understand, in the development of the national security strategy, weren't they? The Christian
Yes.
nationalists, which
Yes.
we featured in a dedicated episode last year.
Right.
That strategy, as we mentioned at the time, had raised eyebrows with its America First approach. Although, again, that was not actually necessarily a new policy. That's been
And it
Democrats
hasn't been
and
carried out,
Republicans
right?
for the last 60 years, hasn't it? Almost,
There
I
is
think.
no piece of that has been carried out, so America First, it's been the opposite
Wow.
since Trump came into office, right? With Venezuela and then Iran and then,
Well, we have Cuba on the radar very
and
strongly at the
Cuba
moment.
on
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Greenland. I don't know what I don't know what the status of that is, but so it's the
Mm.
opposite of America First,
Yeah, yeah.
which is really frustrating. I think so many of us are just sitting here dumbfounded about how this happened. How could this happen? And there's so many good books about this, about where the
Mm,
origin of
mm,
this problem started. And it goes way back, even before Obama, because some people will point to the swing from the Obama era and the racism that was hidden and subdued during that time, unfortunately. But when we first heard about Project 2025, it seemed incredulous, and now they are checking things off the list of
mm,
that. And,
mm,
and I
mm,
I
mm,
don't know how this happens. I
mm.
really were just
A lot of it's not being reported, or it's not getting
right.
a high exposure. There's so much happening. So many
So
executive
much.
orders going through all the time.
And
Yeah.
they're brilliant at creating diversions and then passing something, and
Mm,
there's just too much chaos.
yeah. But do you think that most Americans, or at least a large number, believe in this "Making America Great Again" slogan, and what that means? In other words, putting
Yes.
their own economic, military interests kind of ahead of everybody else?
Yes. And there is, you know, our news channel, Fox News, perpetuates that incessantly. So Fox News makes its listeners believe that all other news is fake news and they are
Mm,
the only true source. And so for us, even within our families and our friends, it's so frustrating that, they've likened this to a cult,
mm,
to the brainwashing
yeah, yeah.
that has happened.
The derangement syndrome. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, no, we have
You have that.
Trump derangement syndrome, and they're all, in the truth.
Mm,
It's absolutely amazing how many people do subscribe to this. And then you have the people who might align with some of Trump's economic policies in order to save their own money, their own nest egg.
yep.
They align with Trump. They don't, they'll say things like, well, yeah, I don't like what he says and I don't, but I think he's doing a few things correct. But then there are people where you're just, you can't, like, did you see the picture of him as Jesus? Does that not,
Yes, yes.
but there's always an excuse. There's always oh, he was just kidding. Oh, you can't take a joke. And it's super frustrating. So
Yeah.
there have been familial lines broken. There have been people that you can't be friends with because it's not just politics anymore.
Well,
It's
yeah. I mean, this is going back a while, even to the time of the first Trump administration. As I mentioned, I had a great privilege of staying with people from across the political divide, and I was quite surprised to find some who, on the surface, didn't say very much actually, and then revealed a very strong right wing attitude. Or I saw couples, married partners, complete loggerheads at the breakfast bar, this kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's bad.
yeah.
I wonder if the rest of the world realizes how bad this conflict is
Well,
here.
I think, lest we become complacent, say here in the UK, it's kind of almost a foretaste for what could be very easily,
Yes.
because there
Yes.
is this similar division. We'll talk about this maybe next week of, you know, the right wing, especially having had a very strong influence, the media playing a very key role in turning opinion. And yeah, a lot of the same undercurrents there, I think, could very easily represent them. So there's a real prospect we could have a right wing party
It's interesting, and
holding
I
the
will
balance of
be
power in
interested.
Parliament next time.
Yeah, I'll be interested to get into this next week with
Mm.
you because your system is set up differently than ours. And our, three parts of our government were set up to have checks and balances.
Yes,
And our checks and balances are gone because the
yes.
Supreme Court is far
Mm.
too often
Mm.
aligned with Trump's ideas. So that's when you say, is this the end of democracy? For me, the loss of these checks and balances and that Congress isn't standing up
Mm. Mm.
to Trump, the Supreme Court, he has them in his pocket. Super scary.
Yeah. I can't
Um,
remember what the issue was, but it was literally a week or two back. I remember seeing, I think it was the speaker in Congress, I believe it was, questioning. It might have been a select committee kind of thing, one of these special committees, questioning those present whether they essentially upheld the particular point of the Constitution,
right.
which was in contradiction with what, again, I can't remember the detail, but it was in contradiction of their support for the administration. And certainly one of the individuals directly questioned was very evasive. It's kind of, I'm going to have to go away and look at that. To which the response was, well, do you know the Constitution or not? It's kind of, no, you don't. And
It's
then
baffling. Yeah.
put the question to that House: Is anyone here? Is anyone here willing to essentially stand against their self-interest?
Right. The self-interest is
Yeah.
amazing.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just baffling to us that he can get away with what he does, and my theory, aligns with the Epstein files, unfortunately. I think he has something on every one of these people. I don't know. I
Mm,
can't
mm,
explain it any other way. Why they're rolling over and letting him do what he's doing. As you can imagine, the midterms are going to be very important here
yeah.
and stressful.
Mm,
So I I can't explain it.
no.
I really can't. I wish I could, but just please know there are those of us who are baffled
Mm,
here.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that is widely understood and recognized.
Good.
Yeah. Since he came to power, a common perception that does get media coverage in the UK is that President Trump has been rolling back human rights in many
Hmm.
areas. We mentioned
Yes.
there's countless executive orders
Yes.
being signed all the time. Areas such as diversity and inclusion, reproductive rights, and access to asylum. To what extent do you think a view that the administration is draconian or anti-liberal is accurate?
It's totally accurate. It's beyond accurate.
That was almost
Um,
a leading question, wasn't it?
yeah, no. The way every post on True Social is the Democrats or the libtards or the language he uses is disgusting.
Mm.
And what they want to roll back. I mean, we can go into the LGBTQ rights and the military. What's happened in the military
Yes.
is horrible, but women's rights, reproductive
Mm.
rights,
Yes.
do you hear about the women who die because they are not given care if they're having a miscarriage?
I don't think I have heard that, no.
Yeah, it's happening.
Mm,
It's
mm,
happening. And, wanting to control even the birth control pill
mm.
is horrible. Now they're going after, I don't know if you've heard this, they're going after women's right to vote.
I have heard that.
And
Yeah, yeah.
people say, "Oh, that can't happen." But there's so many things that have happened that we've thought that can't happen. Even Roe versus Wade being overturned was beyond our belief.
Mm.
So, yeah, yes,
Wow.
that is happening
Oh my goodness.
at an alarming pace
Well,
that they're getting things
it
passed.
certainly is getting visibility, if not these individual, which, really should be getting visibility, I think, but certainly the general pace of this change and this erosion of the central freedoms that have been taken for granted.
Well, I mean, the ICE situation and the immigrants, and
Exactly.
hopefully you've seen the demonstrations and the way people have risen up against that. Minneapolis
Absolutely.
was
I mean, that
a great role
certainly had
model.
a huge and ongoing kind of
Mhm.
coverage. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
but it's still
the images from
happening.
that are very powerful, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still happening.
So maybe just a few quick-fire thoughts on odd comments I sometimes hear on radio chat shows or in general conversation. Let's see if I can frame these as statements that you might have a word or two to say in response as to whether or not they're fully on the money. Most Americans are brash and boastful. Many think they run the world.
So I think we know those people. I know who you're talking about, especially when they visit the European countries. And there are many of us who are super conscious about that. And when we do visit, we try to counter that behavior. But I've seen that behavior in action, and I just want to apologize to the rest of the world. I'm sorry.
Hopefully they're a minority.
Yes. Yeah, I have a
I think,
feeling I'm just gonna be saying, "I'm sorry. I'm
and I can
sorry for
certainly
all
think
these
of
things."
a few brash and boastful Brits for sure as well. Certainly come from a country that even long after the end of its empire, still thought it ran the world as well. So
Well,
not
I've not experienced that, but yeah,
not so much these days, I have to say.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
perhaps 30 years ago, you might have got more of that.
Yes. I could understand why that attitude is popular, but just know there are many of us who are trying to counter that.
I think, as I say, someone that has visited the US a lot, and not recently, but certainly over many years, that certainly wasn't my impression either. Apart from putting Ghislaine Maxwell behind bars, this is one of these other statements, so So quick fire response to. They're not obviously doing anything to see justice done for the victims of Epstein and his many cronies.
Amen. We are, there are some representatives who keep threatening to say the list of names, and yet no one does. And I don't understand it. I don't know if they're being threatened. It's trust me, there are people who are not going to let this go until those names are out. There are people who have made it their life mission. And this exact statement is being said, around the world. These people are being, especially the UK's done a good job.
Yeah, I
We're not,
think there has been more of a response here, hasn't there? Really, with
yeah,
some of
we're not
the
doing a
high
good job.
profile names.
Hmm.
But
So yeah,
well, let's just continue to hope and pray that fighting really bears fruit
yeah,
to see justice. Another statement: Trump is increasingly unhinged. He makes policy announcements on Truth Central, changes his opinion from day to day, is totally unpredictable.
yes. And I'm baffled by people who become involved with him or on his cabinet because he will turn on anyone on a dime. And, my husband and I were talking, saying, I wonder if he's just become a non-entity, that people just don't even listen to him anymore as far as the stock market and things like that go, because
Yeah. Well,
it's just blah, 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 blah.
yeah, I've heard this idea as well. Why should we respond immediately to what he said right now? Because tomorrow it's likely to change again. And
Yes.
yeah, it's almost not believed. And I think that's also true to some extent with the response of allies in the world and foreign partners. It's a case of, well, enough. You keep on threatening with tariffs or insulting our troops or whatever it is. Enough. We're not going to just jump at every change of
Exactly.
of, of
Yeah.
of demand. Really,
You never know what tomorrow can bring, or
no,
even an hour. Yeah.
exactly. Another statement. If you get convicted of a crime over there, you can expect them to lock you up and throw away the key.
Well, my answer would be unless you have a lot of money.
Ah,
I call the justice system a justice economy. It's definitely a bad place to be if you are in poverty and can't buy your way out of
mm,
some of this stuff. You've probably seen that. You've even
yeah,
seen it on TV
yeah,
movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can you afford a lawyer? Can you afford a good
Yes.
lawyer?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, I think a perception I have, rightly or wrongly, is that it would vary enormously from state to state. And generally, my impression would be that perhaps more of the northern and coastal states would have a more lenient approach to many crimes. At least there'd be more of a focus on rehabilitation. The southern
Mm,
states are the ones that always have the reputation for, life without
they're
parole and,
yeah,
and so on. And yeah,
they're definitely bad. The southern states, you don't want to be in prison in Alabama, but California, 3 strikes, you're
true,
out.
true, true. California, yeah,
There,
absolutely.
yeah.
That is.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah.
And on the subject of crime and punishment, a majority of Americans, this is another statement, still think the death penalty is justified for perpetrators of heinous crimes.
I don't know if it's a majority. I think there are a lot. I know Texas is leading the way on that one of, the most executions, but I would hesitate to say it's the majority of Americans think that.
Mm. Mm. Has it been changing, do you think?
There are many states like Illinois has, banned the death penalty. There are many states that have changed their laws and made it a little bit more difficult. Yeah, I
It
don't
is,
think it's the majority.
yeah, it is something that gets mentioned, I think, quite a lot because for many Europeans, the death penalty has been off the statute books pretty much across Europe.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, for 60 years. I mean, the last execution in the UK was, I believe, 1965. And it's regarded as almost a mark of, I call civil society in the minds of many people here,
Yes, as it
a kind
should.
of a progress advance. And yes, there's still a lot. It's a debate that obviously comes up and always will trigger strong feelings on both sides.
Mm.
But there has been this perception the US kind of alone amongst the like kind of the G8, the
Yeah.
Western
Oh,
world
yeah.
has continued down this road.
And we incarcerate more people than any country in the world. So we have
Mm,
that claim to fame. And I think our listeners have heard me talk about this before. I'm very passionate about this population. And my daughter, who is working to get her PhD at Rutgers, is working on it too. She's going to be doing some good work. We are draconian in how we handle those who are incarcerated. And it is a racist situation too, you have to
mhm.
admit. So there's a lot to be done in this area, and it would be very difficult because, the fear, using the fear of what could happen if you change the way things are right now. But we spend a lot of money on our incarceration system.
Right, let's change the subject. US healthcare is basically a case of no care if you're poor. Healthcare is becoming unaffordable for many Americans and is a millstone around the necks of the older generations.
Well, it's not efficient care if you're poor because they end up in the emergency room. And
Mm,
so that makes a bottleneck there. And I do wish my husband was here to speak to
mhm.
this because he's in the healthcare system and says feels like he's dealing with the same problems 41 years later
Wow.
that happened when he started, and that's true. Our healthcare system is abominable, but we here, you know, socialized medicine has its downsides too. So
Sure.
people are afraid of adopting that.
Mm, mm, yeah.
Yeah, we hear in
And are people being stuck in the emergency room because it's down to who is going to pay for this for
yeah,
ongoing?
they don't have a primary
They don't
care
have an
physician.
ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
they've waited until it's that bad. They Nonprofit hospitals are required to treat anyone who walks in the door, no matter what. So they know that they'll get care.
mm,
So yeah, it's not good. There was
no.
well,
And then difficulty, I
the
guess, also with where they go once they've had care if they need aftercare.
mhm.
If they're going back on the streets, for example, or into situation they can't afford
And it
personal care.
wasn't, until Obamacare or, you know, there are other names for it, but you weren't even guaranteed that insurance companies would insure you. I remember having a 3-hour interview with an insurance company to try to get insurance because I had to get private insurance,
Mm.
and I got denied.
Oh my goodness.
And but once Obamacare was passed, at least you were guaranteed to be able to purchase it. Super expensive, really expensive. Do you have to pay? Does it come out of your paycheck or anything? Is there any fee?
There is a contribution towards social services.
Sure. Okay.
Healthcare is a primary part of that. What's called the national insurance that is deducted at source from people's pay. Private care is very, very strong in the UK as well. A lot of people who are up for private care as an
Mhm.
alternative to National Health Service, you know, mainly to guarantee kind of I guess, nicer conditions for being treated or very often, but also for jumping the queue, which is a real
Yeah.
problem in the health service here. Another common view. In many American cities and states, the poor are left to die. The rich are very rich, although philanthropy is also more in evidence than in the UK.
I don't know if the poor are left to die. I mean, it's not like that makes me think of Mother Teresa's work in India that the poor are left to
Yep.
die. I think that there are cycles that those who are impoverished are born into, and there's systemic and they continue, and we have not thought of helpful ways for people to break through those cycles of poverty. I think we have a misperception of what poverty is and why it happens, and I that makes me sad, especially having worked with that population. And I feel like I came to understand it by being in it and hearing from
Mhm.
people. So that makes me very sad that it's not understood the difficulty of breaking through that cycle.
Yeah.
And that, again, being an accountant, I'll use J.K. Rowling in the UK. she was on aid, right? When she was
I
writing the
believe
Harry
so.
Potter
Yes, yes,
books.
yes.
And she's paid back your government, I'm sure a million times fold for that
Mm, mm.
little bit of help that she got. And the numbers get tweaked here about the amount of abuse to those systems, the people are taking advantage.
Yes, yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's actually a very small amount, but that gets played up, especially on channels like Fox News.
Mm.
That's what
Yeah.
they talk about all the time instead of the people who are being served and the positive things that happen from
All
those
part of the fear
services.
game again, isn't it? Building that
Yeah.
picture of the other as being
Yes.
the real enemy. Yeah.
And the rich are getting richer. We're very aware of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, and we're also very aware of just Jeff Bezos' ex-wife, who has given away so much of her fortune, and Bill Gates' wife, who has given
Mm,
away
mm,
so much of her
mm,
fortune.
mm, mm.
So hopefully those stories will become even more prominent.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
people who are
certainly the
doing
Gates
it.
work, the Gates Foundation is well known.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, another one. Most US gun owners fiercely oppose any gun regulation. This is going to be one. This had to come up, didn't it? Gun regulation. For most Americans, the right to own a gun is sacrosanct.
Yeah. I'm sure you're baffled by this one with the amount of gun violence that happens in our country and the fact that nothing is done to curb that.
Mm,
I'm not a gun owner. I will not be a gun owner. My son is a hunter and has many hunting guns and keeps them locked up and is very responsible, and I respect that. That's fine.
mm.
I would say most Americans will, they have no problem with somebody owning a gun if you're responsible, that there should be laws similar to driving a car and having a driver's license to own a gun. It's really, do you guys hear the word common sense law, common sense gun law there? Um,
No, not particularly, I don't think.
so that's what most
Mm.
people really want. We don't need the AK-47s.
No.
Uh, can we get rid of those, please? And then, like I said, common sense registration. If you've had a mental illness, you can't have a gun, things like that.
Sure.
They and those are not even acted upon. So there is a huge frustration there. With the claim being, if you do anything, you're taking away our guns and our right to
Uh,
defend ourselves. It goes to the extreme immediately. And
exactly.
that's not
Always
what
goes
people
back
want.
to that. What is it? Second
Are
Amendment?
you allowed to own a gun in the UK?
Well, only in very specific circumstances. So, you know, certain farming roles, for example, or
Okay.
I think in controlled environments, there's shooting clubs and so on. But there's quite a tight process for licensing and checking and acquiring as well. You can't just walk into, as I saw, when I used to travel around the States, you've even been in the superstore, you could buy a gun or
Yeah.
selling ammunition, and
Yeah.
there'd be a gun store on kind of the main street. And
Yeah.
no, you won't find that
Yeah.
in evidence here. So, on the similar theme, shootings often take place in many big cities, especially in poorer areas. And this
Well,
idea that there's gun crime.
shootings, it should just end, and shootings often take place
Mm,
because it
mm.
happens everywhere now. And it's not just the four cities. It happens. You never know where it's going to happen next, especially, our schools. I'm
We
sure you
covered
hear
this,
about
didn't
that.
we? We covered an episode on, my goodness, what was the I don't like Mondays shooting. Anyway, we have an episode on this, and I
Mhm.
know at the time we looked at the number of mass shootings happening in the US, and it was
Mhm.
something like one a week on average. It was
Yeah.
extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't even make the top news
No,
anymore.
no. We can
It's it's horrible.
put the link for that episode in the show
Mhm.
notes. ICE raids and heavy-handed policing in some cities show that the state is ready to quash any dissent if it wishes to. This is not the action expected of a modern, democratic, Western state, or the idea of being a force for good in the world that America traditionally represents.
Yeah. Do I think that they've done a good job in inflicting fear in the average US citizen? No, I don't. I think the majority of Americans are ready to defend and stand up to this. As you saw in Minneapolis,
Mm,
they did a great job of standing up and bringing a light to what was happening there, which was horrible. None of it is good. It makes me sick to my stomach what's happening. Are they trying to inflict fear? Yes.
mm.
Do I think it's gonna work? No. Mm-mm. I don't know what else to say.
It's
Yeah.
quite something, isn't it, to see the way that people en masse did respond and
Oh
demonstrate
my
and
gosh.
kept up that demonstration,
It's terrible,
at great risk themselves very often.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Another one. In America, if you're a person of color, your chances of having a good life are still much less than if you're white, especially if you're born into a rich family. Whites hold the majority and have the deciding voice in most areas of public life.
So that's the perception in the UK?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yes, it's an unrealized people won't admit to that, the white people, and I was raised in a very white, non-diverse city, Wheaton, Illinois, and there's a saying that you were born on third base and you think you hit a triple. Have you ever heard that?
No,
Okay, well, and I don't know if the UK is into baseball as much as, we
not
are,
as
so it may
strongly.
not,
No, absolutely. It's
but
cricket here. Yeah. Mm.
but does that make sense to you? You you were born with this privilege and you think you work for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and I think that's often the case in so many of the ways that we were trying to alleviate this privilege have been destroyed with Trump, with getting rid of the DEI and allowing others to emerge as worthy and competent. That's being destroyed. And
Real
it's just
backward
heartbreaking.
steps. Yeah.
Yeah, real steps that we're helping to alleviate this. We're going backwards. That's for sure.
Hmm.
It's hard.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, it must be. Yeah. There was a very, I mean, this is quite a not unique, but a very rare, perhaps, case of Black family made good. I saw the Michael Jackson film last week, and
Oh.
that was telling the story of, well, obviously his father's role quite strongly in this as well, but this rise from very poor backgrounds in Gary, Indiana,
Mhm. Not
to
far from me.
yeah,
Mhm.
to a life of fortune and fame and controversy, of course. But yeah, there are obviously exceptions to the rule.
Oh, definitely. Athletes and, some like actors and singers and
Generally,
stuff.
you've got
But
to be very good, very talented, haven't you? Or
yeah,
yeah, have some special in to 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 make it. That would be the perception, I think.
yeah.
So another one, the so-called US UK special relationship is over. Most Americans have never cared about this, if they know about it anyway.
I don't think that's true. No, I mean, maybe the special relationship is over because we've done our part and not we, our administration has done its part in destroying this, but I I don't think that most Americans have never cared about this is not true. We're super aware of like World War II, the
Mm,
part the UK played and Churchill, and we hear about that quite a bit. I think no, I think we understand our connection to the UK.
mm, mm.
Most of us, at least in my circle, I think it's very important.
And is it true with other great countries? You have the oldest relationship with France, isn't it? And what is the one with Canada?
Canada and France, you mean?
No, no, the US and Canada and the US and France.
Oh,
There are
oh,
similar special
yeah.
relationship kind of ideas, aren't there?
Well, we love Canada. Our administration's not been very nice to them, but the majority of people love Canada, and it's a great place to visit, and we welcome people. We haven't. It's like a joke, between the two of us, but that I hear more from Canadians than the U.S. people. But definitely the UK, I don't know, I think we think of you as like our big brother.
Really? Not the little brother.
No, because
Ah,
it's where it all came from.
I see. Interesting.
It's where we came from. When I was in London, I thought everybody should come here because it, it you can feel it that that's where it's where we came from.
And there certainly has always been an appreciation of the cultural links, haven't there? And yeah, the history that for sure does come through.
I would say that
The common language, of course, as
yeah,
well.
the common language, but
Yeah,
you are our well-behaved sibling. Yeah,
sometimes,
you're
some
the etiquette and I love being in England. Brilliant, lovely, and it's all so nice and upbeat and just so much more civilized there.
wow, that could be a perception we could challenge sometimes, but
Yes, that's been my experience. Yeah.
we could say a lot more about it. Maybe we will next week. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll see. Maybe come back to that one.
Yeah.
Another one. The Democrats seem to be nowhere at the moment, leaderless and not pulling their weight in the Capitol.
Well, I hope this is not true. They are taking a lot of heat. We are wondering who is going to emerge as the leader, and we've not seen that yet. However, I had a little inside when I was in Washington last year for World Labyrinth Day.
Mm.
I had people tell me not to worry, that there are some wonderful leaders coming forth, but the timing of when to bring these leaders forth is going to be crucial because they get crucified
Mm.
by this right wing, no scruples, right?
Will
They'll be
that be by the
crucified.
time of the midterms, do you think?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
that
needs
should
to be
have
because they
some.
need to be elected,
They do,
and
yeah.
we're seeing that now, and local governments and people coming forth. You've probably heard that I think it was Bondi who
Oh,
said that if
yes.
we prosecute all of the Epstein perpetrators, there will be nobody left to run our economy and our government. And I laughed when I heard that because I know there are so many good people who could step in and fill those shoes.
Mm.
I have confidence that there are going to be some really strong leaders. Now, there's belief that there's impropriety on both sides of the aisle, right? I mean, one isn't better than the other.
No,
So there's some really good people coming forward who I think are going to rise. I hope. We'll see.
well, we'll
But
see. We're gonna be very
I'm not
soon,
sure
isn't it? Really.
they really have no power. The Democrats just are they're yelling
Well, they
and
have a chance of winning back Congress, don't they? That seems
yes, they do.
so
They do.
that will make a difference, I
Yes,
would think.
they do.
Mm.
But when they do bring out the incredulous actions of the Republican Party, they're labeled as whiners and whatever, but they don't have power right now
Mm.
to do anything. So, really, I'm hearing a lot more about the the weakness of the Republican Party to stand up to the incredulous
Yes.
behavior
Yes.
of the administration. And where are they? Because they're the ones who could change things.
Yes.
And, what's that saying? When your enemy's committing suicide, don't stop them. So I think that's part of the
Part of the
play.
strategy.
I don't know. I'm not in the Democratic, leadership, but keep thinking they're shooting themselves in the foot, and
It's
that's
the fact they're not making a lot of noise at the moment doesn't mean that that's not part of the game, really. And yeah.
I think so. But there are a lot of people who are saying this here too.
Mm.
Mhm.
Just a couple more. America. This is as well. We decided to split this episode into two. Is America always looks after Israel's back and justifies its actions, whoever's in power in the Knesset, because the Zionist lobby is so strong in Washington.
Hmm. Yeah, I think people are wondering about that big time. And it's unfortunate because I think there are so many people in America who support the Jewish faith
Yes,
and our
yes, of
friends who
course.
are
Yes,
Jewish.
yes,
We don't have anything against that.
yes. And Israel's
It's
right to exist and so on, and
oh,
its
absolutely.
vulnerability, and yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's Netanyahu who we're disgusted with. Very similar to our country. I feel like it must be, that
Mhm.
this administration is doing this. But also, I think they see Israel as our ally in the Middle East that we need, right? we kind of need an ally there.
Yes, yes, yes,
And that's a reason,
yes.
but
Mm.
I don't know if it's worth it anymore. We'll see what happens. But we don't want to abandon our Jewish
No, no,
friends.
no, 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 no. So again, we could debate at great length on that one, and probably
Hmm.
not get
Hmm.
to a definite conclusion on it. But absolutely not about passing judgment on Israel as a state, or certainly not on the Jewish people. Finally, Americans are obsessed with trademarking everything, heavily into litigation. Personal ownership and rights are defended to the death.
I have never heard this.
Really?
I, I This one kind of made me giggle because I'm probably a part of this. I don't know. I mean, it's so
I think what I quite often hear is that people will say, if you're in America, what you do is you quite quickly will rush to suing or threatening to sue someone if you don't,
oh,
if there's
okay,
any kind
okay.
of disagreement.
Oh, no,
Or
I've
another
never
one I
sued
come
anyone.
across
No.
is trademarks or registered
Yeah.
trademarks put on everything.
Yes. And yes, I've
Disclaimers.
had to trademark some things in my business, so
Uh,
I've done that
there's
process.
sometimes good reason for that, obviously for
Hmm.
protection and so on, but it's more a case of seem to be overdone, I think.
Yeah. The the suing and everything. We were my husband and I were driving this weekend and every billboard was a personal liability lawyer, call us if you get in a car accident, if you help. It was just mind-boggling. And the commercials on TV. So probably if anyone spent a little bit of time here, they would I understand why they would have that perception.
And it maybe
Again,
there's some organizations particularly are renowned for being litigious. One that comes to my mind is the Disney Corporation, that, for example, protects the name Snow
yeah.
White,
Yes.
not just its designs for costumes or whatever and images.
Mhm.
It's a name of a traditional character from the fairy story that you will get sued for
Yeah.
if you use in
Hmm.
your own work. Yeah, crazy. Anyway, there we go. Crazy from my
Yeah,
point of view.
our justice system, our legal system is riddled with waste and making lawyers rich. I was just listening to a story about someone who was suing a diocese for abuse when he was young, and the it had been going on for 3 years, and the amount that had been paid out to the lawyers,
Mm, mm,
like,
mm, mm,
tripled
mm.
the amount that the defendants were asking for.
Yeah, yeah. That's not
That's
unusual in the UK as well, and
okay.
I think
Okay, that's good to know.
that
Yeah.
that that happens as well, and certainly there are many lawyers out there
Yes.
keen to protect their income, shall we say. Finally, as the US approaches its 250th anniversary, what are the things that, as an American, you're personally proud about and want to make known to the world? And perhaps we might extend this to say, ask generally, how do you think Americans are perceived by others? And what are your hopes for the next, if not 250 years, let's say perhaps the next 20? So there's three questions there, aren't there?
It's we're some of us are tenuous in celebrating this anniversary because we're so sad about what's happened in the last year or a little bit more than a year. But we are proud of our Constitution,
Mm,
and we have to have trust in our Constitution and how it was set up, and the ability for me to do this podcast
yes.
and not be afraid of retribution, the ability to speak up, the ability to have our King's March and do the things like that without, being incarcerated afterward, although some people were. So that's what I'm proud of the US for being able to speak to both sides.
Mm.
Everyone gets to speak, although that's been impaired in the last year.
Do
So,
you think when it comes around to the 4th of July, though, people are going to say, well, look, let's just have a party. This is about 250 years. It's not about the last 25 months, or not even 25
um,
months.
I don't think everyone will. No, I really don't.
Mm,
It's not that I haven't really heard
it's kind
that
of
much
dulled,
about it.
sort of
Yeah.
dull the sense of celebration that might be there otherwise, really.
Yeah.
Much to be proud of, isn't there? Gettysburg comes to my
Well,
mind. As you say,
yeah. I mean, I'm
Constitution
proud.
to be admired, really, and modeled.
The Constitution, I am proud in the past of how we, USAID, the Peace Corps, the way we have reached out to the world
Yes,
and have shared our wealth with others.
definitely been a force for good generally in the world. I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get back there.
Well, time will tell.
Hmm.
So thank you. That's been very enlightening and got me thinking about quite a few things, certainly reminding me not to rush to assumption. Perhaps there are some areas of misconception that I and other UK listeners, or indeed other non-US listeners, may have where we might want to resolve to check our thinking. We'll leave off suggesting particular areas for focus this week, since these are likely to vary from listener to listener. But as a suggested intention focus for this week, as we've reflected on particularly British perceptions on Americans, we suggest holding as our main intention, we will that all Britons whose views of their allies may be biased by news, social media, and social group misconceptions will seek to understand the truth of what really happens across the pond, and especially where such conceptions offer a negative or potentially harmful othering of American people. Please join us in holding this. In next week's episode, we'll turn the tables as Ellen talks to me about what life in the UK is really like, at least whether it measures up to some common perceptions held by Americans. So don't miss it. And you can check out other past episodes where we've given special attention to matters American as part of our special USA 250 series. We'll put links for these in the show notes.
I hope it was enlightening, Clive,
It
although I
was,
think
yeah.
many of your statements were spot on, unfortunately, so I couldn't dispute them.
I was very conscious they tended to focus on negative perceptions, unfortunately, and perhaps we might have had a few more that were more positive and upbeat and appreciative. that might have been in the mix as well. I'm sure we could come up with many.
I hope so. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. And remember, you can connect with us in the Facebook group and for live intention holding in Clive's daily Insight Timer offerings, and with me in the Labyrinth Activist Network's Zoom calls. Details of how to hook up with these are in our show notes. Look out too for our next special topic episode, which we'll be releasing in the next few days. Thank you for listening and for sharing with us and holding intentions. We look forward to connecting again next time. And in the meantime,
thank you. Go well. Stay safe.
And remember, we're more powerful together.
Impact is presented by Ellen Bintz and Clive Johnson and produced by Impact Productions. Our theme music is by Chris Collins and our logo artwork is by Auto Classic. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or your favorite podcast provider. We're a non-commercial podcast dedicated to people of any faith tradition or none who yearn for healing in our troubled world. Please pass on the word so others may join us in making an impact. Thank you for listening.